Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Hannah Elliott.
And I'm Matt Miller, and this is Hot Pursuit. Coming up on today's podcast, General Motors announces plans to get back in the self-driving car market as it sells a lot more expensive gas trucks.
And I've got a new piece out about the defense of driving old Rolls-Royces. This is part of a new series we're doing on why the classic Rolls-Royce deserves more respect.
Very, very cool. All right, we're going to get to both of those topics shortly, but first I want to start with what is, and this may surprise some people.
Yes.
My first time ever driving an electric P car. I got behind the wheel of a Porsche Taycan. It's the GTS version of the station wagon shaped model. And it's the first and only time I've ever driven an electric Porsche.
I'm shocked.
I know.
Why has it taken this long?
I don't know.
Did you try not to?
I didn't try not to. No.
Okay.
And I am kind of on the fence here, I have to say. In terms of just my first impressions, it's only been a couple of days. I've been commuting back and forth to work in it, and I took it on a rip upstate around Bear Mountain.
Okay.
It is very, very quick.
Well, we expected nothing less.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you say you're on the fence, is that aesthetically or performance-wise?
No, so aesthetically, it's gorgeous. I mean, I absolutely love the way it looks, and I don't think many people disagree with me. Really? Even like the shooting brake version is, I mean, chef's kiss. Like, I think it's amazing.
Sure.
And the interior, I think, wins me over as well. Like, as soon as I got in it, it had the PCM turned off.
Okay.
So the first time I drove it with no music or anything, no nav, the screens were dark, and I just thought, what a sweet look. And even when I turned them on, they're not so intrusive. It's not like too many screens that overloads you. So aesthetically, I think it's amazing. Do you know people who have a problem with that?
Yes, me. I mean, we'll just start at the top. I don't hate it, but to me, it just looks like they took a 911 and stretched it out, which is kind of a perversion of a beautiful thing.
Huh.
So that's my quibble. I would say, does it look better than a Tesla Model S? Of course. That's probably one of the least good-looking cars I've ever seen.
Wow,
but
I disagree with you on that, too.
Well, I'm not surprised.
I think the Model S is beautiful. It's
God,
elegant.
What? It's a beautiful
timeless.
toaster. It's an appliance that was made by AI
Agreed.
to be very efficient.
It's a device, not a machine.
Exactly. There is no way that the Tesla Model S or even the Taycan would have come out of France or Italy. Let me put it this way. The two centers of beauty in the world, the two countries most responsible for beauty in the world, would never have created these cars.
Well, if it is a 911 stretched out, I don't have a problem with that because I love the 911.
I feel like it is.
I don't see that. I don't think they stretched it out far enough because one of the main problems I have with this car is that the B pillar is completely in the way of getting in and out of it. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I have to slink around the B pillar to get in. And the car, by the way,
I want to see you slinking.
As soon as you approach it or open the door, it jumps up on its air suspension, which is a really cool trick.
Yeah, I do admit that I like the gimmick.
But then the B pillar is like substantially in the way. I think it's beautiful. I think it looks just futuristic enough while still maintaining like elegant lines and a classic look. It's not too much. It's not over designed. And then driving it's amazing, right? It's so quick.
Nobody quibbles with it.
It's so easy to place it where you want it. And for commuting, especially in New York, it's so perfect because you need to jet in and out of these spots. When a spot opens up in a lane next to you, you need to get in and then get out.
This is totally true.
I had today my record fastest commute from Scarsdale to Bloomberg. I made it in 27 minutes door to door.
Wow. At what time of day?
It was 5:37 when I left, so it wasn't in New York. The New York traffic, that's not terribly early.
Sure.
Because it's already after the congestion charge starts. So, but so I love driving it as well. My biggest problem with it is I'm sitting there and feeling very much like I'm in a Porsche,
Of course.
And then thinking like, well, I could be in a 911 though.
Yes, for sure.
I could be hearing that flat six wail.
Yes, and I will say I don't think Porsche would have produced a vehicle that wasn't incredible to drive. They just won't let it out of the factory, and I do give them a lot of props for that. I remember, this car debuted in 2019, which is 100 years ago in car years, and was at Niagara Falls, and then everyone agreed, drove amazing, very expensive. I think the first models were maybe $185,000 for the Turbo S, $150,000 for just the Turbo. That's very expensive. And since then, the values have really dropped. My problems with this car are not driving related, is what I'm trying to say. There are other problems with it, like very chronicled and reported on recalls and reliability issues, to be honest.
Well, this thing feels solid as...
And failing aftermarket values, too, which you can get one for pretty cheap on the aftermarket.
You know what? That's interesting. So it had me instantly thinking about and scouring the classified ads for a cheaper one, because it is an amazing way to commute. And if you're weaving in what is essentially bumper-to-bumper traffic, there's nothing better than an electric propulsion, right? Because you have instant torque.
Sure.
But the thing is, the whole time I'm driving it, I'm thinking about Porsche because I'm in a Porsche.
Yes.
And then I'm thinking about 911. And
yes,
obviously that's better,
Yes. And also, why have we not talked about the Panamera? The other thing with the Taycan is it kind of cannibalized the Panamera and made that disappear from consciousness. But the Panamera still, at this point, exists, right?
Yeah, but I think I would rather have a Taycan than a Panamera.
Right.
And for me, I'd rather have a Taycan than a Boxster as well, because of my own personal issues with the lack of...
Like a 718.
It just doesn't seem to have enough power to me. It's more of a momentum car, as people say, right? And I want, the brute force.
Yes. I just keep going back to the fact that I've talked to so many people who agree with us and say the performance is incredible, and they agree with you when they say they like how it looks, but that they've had legitimate and recurring reliability issues on these cars. And let's be honest, the whole electrification of Porsche has been a big challenge and has caused the company a lot of failure.
I mean,
financially and business-wise.
I mean, my thoughts when driving this are the same as when I drive any electric car that I really like, especially if I really like the aesthetics and the interior, which are important to me. My first thought is, could I keep this car forever, right? Like, I'm going to keep my Dodge Challenger forever because it meets every need that I have for that kind of tool.
Sure.
And it's never going to be obsolete. Like, even if they come out with a 427 or a 426 motor, I can still stroke and bore mine out to that. So whenever I drive an electric car, I'm always thinking, if I keep this forever and battery technology improves by leaps and bounds, will I be able to swap out the battery? And the answer, inevitably, for almost all electric cars is no. You're always going to be stuck with, it's not like an ICE car where you can swap out a motor, right? You're always going to be stuck with the battery that you have because it's part of the skateboard or the way it's built into the car. It just can't be switched. And that's, I think, a failing of electric cars.
Yeah, I agree. We often talk about Chris Bryant in his columns, and he wrote a column last year that the headline was "Secondhand EVs are starting to look like a bargain," which is kind of what you're alluding to, I think.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, we've talked about that before.
And we have talked about it. Again, For me, I'm a little bit gun shy because I'm too used to how my phone battery has degraded over the years, and I still feel like that will happen to my car battery. So even if you swap out the whole battery, which to me seems like it's an expensive proposition to begin with, I just don't know if there's enough left for me to want in a used car.
Let's leave it with the famous quote that was attributed to Walter Rohrl,
The great driver.
The great rally driver whose name
Yes.
is so difficult for Americans to pronounce.
Yes.
He apparently, now I'm not sure if this is true, but back in 2019 when this came out,
I know what you're going to say.
He apparently had worked on this car, and he said he'd never experienced such immediate and impressive performance, even in his fastest rally cars. He said the quietness of the Taycan was truly a unique experience, and he said the weight, steering, and brakes all made it feel distinctly like a Porsche, and yet he would never buy one.
Yeah, that's what a legend. What a legend. Oh, I've got a Taycan joke, actually.
What is it?
The Germans wanted to name it something else, but all the good names were Taycan.
I think that my 5-year-old would appreciate that joke. All right, so coming up, General Motors shelved its robo-taxi unit less than a year ago, but now the company is ready to get back into the self-driving market, and they're hoping to continue knocking it out of the park with their high-priced, high-margin trucks and SUVs. More on that after this break. This is Hot Pursuit. I'm Matt Miller along with Hannah Elliott. General Motors held a big press conference touting new targets as it continues to sell high-margin, high-priced trucks, and said it's going to get back to self-driving vehicles with a 2028 Escalade IQ. All right, we are lucky enough to have our Detroit bureau chief in the house. David Welch joins us. I guess, David, you're in town for this General Motors presentation. I saw you there yesterday with Mary Barra as the CEO, as well as President Mark Royce, and then a couple of their super tech execs, Sterling Anderson and Dave Richardson.
Yeah.
General Motors the stock went on a tear this week, and it's because they raised their forecast in terms of the ultra high-end luxury trucks they're selling. Is that right?
They raised their earnings forecast, period, based on truck sales doing well. I mean, GMC, which is all expensive pickup trucks and SUVs, on pace for a record year. And also, they gave a lot of clarity on a couple of things investors were worried about. One is tariffs, so they're managing those costs. And the other one is, clearly they've got enough investment in electric vehicles. They don't need to put any more into that. And investors have always been uncertain on how much money that stuff is really going to make in the next few years. So if you're looking at a stock like GM and you're worried about, where their earnings are going to go, the truck business prints money, and if that goes into an EV business that loses money, it's not a great investment. And so look, based on where the market is, based on Trump's policies, they got a dozen EVs on the market. They got a couple of battery plants, a third one planned. They don't need to put any more money into that. And investors are kind of like, great, so you're just going to print money on pickup trucks and SUVs going forward. And we like that. So the stock went on a tear because all of that uncertainty was basically cleared off the decks.
David, tell us about how much the self-driving announcement had to do with people feeling good about GM, or how related were those two things? I read your piece. GM announced that they're getting back into self-driving cars. How interrelated are those topics?
There's some connection there. I think go back to when GM had Cruise, which is a fully self-driving vehicle,
sure,
and a robotaxi business like Waymo is running now.
We've been talking a lot about Waymo.
Yeah, look, Waymo is doing some interesting stuff, but GM investors hated it. Every time GM put money into Cruise, or I should say conversely, if GM laid people off at Cruise or cut back, shares went up. So by the time GM killed Cruise off, and the stock had gone up a significant percentage because of that, and because earnings did better because it wasn't a drag every quarter, what that essentially meant was that investors assigned a negative value to Cruise. they didn't want to see money going into that because they think it's going to take forever. Now, if you're Google and you have all kinds of cash and much better cash flow, it's not inconsequential. It's not cheap to fund Waymo, but for a company the size of Alphabet Inc., it's like money in the couch cushions. It's pocket change. But for GM, it was real money. With what they announced yesterday, it says GM's getting back into self-driving vehicles by continually developing the Super Cruise business they have now, which already makes money. And it doesn't require a lot of investment to keep doing that. You're investing in the people, you're hiring people, it's software, but the investment goes up and down the elevator every day or, in the front door, as opposed to building more plants and scaling up in cities to run a robotaxi business. Also, frankly, I think it's unclear to a lot of investors how robotaxi businesses are going to make money because those fleets are very expensive to maintain. Sure. But GM's not doing that. They're selling a service that already has very nice margins, and GM gave some clarity on that, 70% margins, to people who are already buying their cars. So if you look at that number of people driving GM vehicles that could end up with Super Cruise or this advanced version of what they're doing in 2028, and maybe they licensed it to another company. They're partnered with Hyundai in a lot of ways. I think that's all good. Now, how much investors choose to believe that GM's going to hit a home run with that's the open question, because the car companies are never good at doing business to consumer kind of stuff. They're good at manufacturing stuff and handing it off to a dealer who faces off with the customer. But hey, it's sort of all icing on the cake. It's all potential upside here for GM as opposed to spending billions to develop a big robotaxi business like they were doing.
We should clarify. So the self-driving, I know a lot of people like to pick nits when you talk about autonomous driving. The idea is now with Super Cruise you can have hands-off driving
and eyes off.
I thought
Crucially.
eyes off is what they're coming out with in 2028.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay. So now the deal is for people who don't drive GM vehicles or haven't tried this, because it's also an expensive option. That's why the margins are high, right? If you get it on a luxury GM, GMC,
like the Hummer,
Chevy or Cadillac vehicle,
or the
a Hummer,
Escalade.
exactly.
Sure.
You can. It completely takes over for you. And David, they said that they'd done 700,000 million miles, so 700 billion miles of hands-off driving with Super Cruise without an accident that's attributed to the system. Have you used the system? What do you think about it?
I've used Super Cruise. I haven't used, obviously, the new one they're going to put out.
No, but I mean the current.
Yeah, I've used the
Super
current
Cruise
one in the Hummer, and it is really good. Like, you're on the highway, you signal that you want to change lanes. It'll change lanes for you. It'll pass cars. It is very good. It's hands-free. I'm not a big fan of these hands-free systems because eventually you have to get your hands back on the wheel, right? Like, you can't do that like interminably.
But can you take your hands all the way off the wheel, or do you have to like rest your fingers on?
You can take it all the way off the wheel, but you have to put it back on after a certain amount of time.
It's also critical, you said, on the highway, because these don't work on surface streets.
That's right.
At the moment.
Yeah,
it's only highway driving.
So you have this hands-free system, but you do have to keep your eyes engaged. And if you take your eyes off the road with Super Cruise currently, it will warn you to put them back on. And if you don't, it'll slow the vehicle down and stop it.
Have you used it, Hannah?
I have, both in the Hummer and in the Escalade.
It's a little bit terrifying.
I agree with David. It's to me, it's like you still have to be engaged driving. You can't just fall asleep and take a nap. You still, like David said, you still have to be paying attention and looking at the road, even if your hands aren't on the steering wheel. So it allows for a little bit more of a relaxed state. But
I mean, it's like an advanced cruise control.
Exactly. That's what it feels like. And also, it's not great about exiting. It will exit, but you kind of have to paying attention.
Yeah,
is what I would say. You still have to be engaged. It's not like take a nap.
Yeah, so Matt, I don't know if you noticed this yesterday, if you crawled around that Escalade IQ, that's the electric Cadillac Escalade, but they had a video screen that was showing episodes of White Lotus.
Yes.
With the implication being that you can really kind of zone out here and watch a movie or TV.
This is for the 2028 version.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That would be an update.
Yeah,
sure.
So presumably you can go to sleep. Now, what you can't do, crucially, you can't sit in the back seat, which you can with the robotaxi systems. Right,
like
you
the
have to be
Waymo.
in the front seat. Reason being is, well, look, what Waymo does, what Zoox does, that's the other robotaxi company, and May Mobility for that matter, is they are tightly geofenced. They can only pick people up and offer fares in rides to fares in certain areas. That's sort of similar with current Super Cruise and the future edition. It's on the highway, and then once you get off the highway onto surface streets, which is probably why Hana was having a tough time with the off-ramp, you have to re-engage. Now, Sterling Anderson told me that eventually they want to get to the point where they're doing this on surface streets in urban areas as well, and they want to add more models beyond the Escalade IQ. So look, Sterling Anderson's head of product development at General Motors. His background is obviously he came from Aurora Innovation, which is AV trucking right now, but before that he worked on autopilot for Tesla, and he did his PhD paper in mechanical engineering on autonomous technology. So what he told me, the quote I had in my story was, I'm going to paraphrase, but he said basically I'd be a curious choice to be CEO if the company didn't believe in autonomy. So they're really going to push this thing. And honestly, if you look at what else is out there on the market, Tesla's full self-driving is not a totally hands-free system. You must put your hands back on the wheel at a certain point. Mercedes and BMW have some nice systems, and Hannah, you've probably driven those more than
Sure.
I have. But don't they top out around 40 miles per hour?
Yes, Mercedes has a level 3 system that is not legal in all states. That similarly, it will do some highway and some street driving.
But everybody's got
it's
some limited version of this.
And it's not legal everywhere. That's the other thing.
They'll have to deal with the regulations around it.
I'm curious, David, you seem to, this quote from Sterling Anderson, which you pointed out, does indicate that this is a real commitment. This isn't just GM sort of trying to stay relevant and act like they are going to be moving in the future, but they're leaving themselves an out in case they don't want to pursue this. Is that your sense that this is real?
Yeah, it is. And I think hiring Sterling says that because, and look, also, this is a story I broke a while back. One of his first meetings with the new staff, the software people at GM, is he said that he was hiring people, some of the former Cruise people back, and he also brought in people from elsewhere. And he confirmed all of that for me yesterday, too. They've hired autonomous talent from other places as well. So, yeah, they're really pushing this. And look, to me, this was a surprise because when Cruise was shut down, GM said, yeah, we're going to develop a personally owned autonomous vehicle. But this is a company whose shareholders rewarded it for getting out of autonomy, whose general counsel's office and lobbyists went through, I'd say, some very, very tough months after the car dragged somebody and the California and federal regulators leaned all over them. This was a nightmare for them. And I just thought, knowing how GM responds to shareholders and regulators, which is to say very accommodatingly, we're never going to see this car from GM. So now Sterling comes back and we're going to see, it's not the autonomous robotaxi, but it really is moving pretty far along the spectrum from hands-off driving or level 2 toward actual level 4 autonomy.
Wait, can I just ask about General Motors seems to have done very well in certain areas. For example, the EVs have massive range. I remember the first time I drove an Audi EV, the e-tron, 6-7 years ago, and I was impressed, but I couldn't get a lot of range. This week, as Hannah and I were talking about, I'm in a Porsche Taycan, which is amazing, but it's 200 miles or so of real range, maybe less if you're really gunning it. Whereas GM has managed 400 plus miles on these big giant trucks. They've also had, I think, a technological advantage in that their infotainment systems, now are a lot of times are dropping Apple CarPlay, but you don't need it because they're so useful and effective as they are. And they have this broad product offering. Like if you want an EV from them, and I know it's not currently en vogue, but you can get everything from an Equinox or a Bolt, lower prices, through to the higher end trucks and the massively expensive, Cadillacs. So why does GM seem to be doing so well compared to others with these higher tech projects? And am I reading that wrong, David?
No, I think you're reading it pretty well. I mean, look, it's this funny debate I had a few years ago on another automotive TV show where the host said, he was making fun of Cadillac because Cadillac's had its troubles over the years. And he said, GM sucks at luxury. And I said, that's not really true. I said, Cadillac has sucked at bringing in luxury buyers. And I said, but if you look at GMC, they sell 400 to 600,000 vehicles a year. And I think about half of them are the Denali brand, these are basically Cadillacs with like kind of more trucky trims inside, but they're luxury vehicles and they're really expensive. So GM brings in a lot of very well-heeled consumers. Cadillac's gotten better through the EVs, but between some very expensive Chevy pickups, Corvettes, now some Hummers, and the GMC line, they have customers who pay a lot of money for their vehicles, and they like technology. Most luxury buyers do. So, I think GM, in a way that Jeep has been unable to do, has identified that there are people who like big vehicles, obviously, and they like them to be luxurious, but they don't necessarily want the conspicuous consumption of an ostentatious brand.
I was just going to say, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's a very interesting juxtaposition, and I was in Texas last week driving around. The juxtaposition between how much money something costs and whether or not it's considered a luxury item. And this goes back to the six-figure trucks, which somehow are not considered flashy and luxury items, but they cost so much money. And
I used to live in Dallas. They called them cowboy Cadillacs.
There you go. Perfect example where it is a weird mind trick that the automakers play where they sort of sneak in all the luxury things and that price point, but it's not considered too flashy for the neighborhood.
It's also part of the selling point. I mean, I remember when I first moved to Bronxville, which is kind of a she suburb of New York, and noticed that all the moms were driving Yukon Denali's.
That's on the right side of the tracks.
because they didn't want to be driving the sort of Kardashian-esque Escalades, but they wanted all the same room and functionality. And so I guess they went with the Denali thinking it was kind of more under the radar, or kind of like a, if you know, you know.
Acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just less of an obnoxious thing, and but it's big, and it's kind of, if an Escalade is kind of brash in its styling, and I think it probably is. GMC Denali, a GMC Yukon Denali it would be much more understated, but you sit inside those things, and they are very much luxed out, and they're very expensive. I've said for a long time I thought Tesla was a luxury brand. Now I think they've given that away by stripping down and discounting their cars. But for the longest time, back when they were selling Model Ys and Model 3s for $65,000, other automotive journalists would get angry at me, like, it's not luxury if you sat inside. I'm like, look, I know it's very Spartan inside, but if you're paying that much for, a four-passenger small vehicle like a Model 3 or Model Y, that's a luxury good if you're paying $65,000.
I was saying I was probably one of the people disagreeing with you because I was like, this is not luxury. This is
an age-old discussion that Hannah and I have. It depends.
No, but Hannah's right too, because it doesn't have luxury appointments because the interiors are frankly very Spartan and just not posh at all. However, my degree's in economics. I look at a luxury good from an economist definition, which is you're paying a hell of a lot more for it for something that does the same thing as a $22,000 Chevy Trax. But it was a different kind of luxury in the sense that if you look at an iWatch or an iPhone, you're paying more for those products than you do for other things. And the luxury is actually in the functionality and technology and the HMI, even though it's a really simple design. Now,
totally
these days,
agree.
I wouldn't say Tesla, even a Model S, I'm not sure I'd call luxury anymore because they haven't done anything with the interiors. I always thought with Tesla that the missed opportunity with Cybertruck was not just that the styling is strange to many people, but I sort of understand the styling in a weird sci-fi kind of way. If the interior was expensive and matched it in a weird sci-fi kind of way, I think they would have kind of had a hit with that. Yeah. And it would have had a sort of a weird cool factor to it. But they took a pass like they always do on interiors, and therefore it's not a luxurious product, but it's a luxury good, if I can kind of split it that way.
That's a good end note. David, thank you so much for joining us. We are out of time with you, but we love having you come on, and please come on more.
And we love reading your stories, and you're doing
Yes.
such a great job running that bureau in Detroit.
Thank you. Handle up your stuff. Matt, love being with you on the air all the time, so let's do it.
Thanks.
Coming up, I've got a new column on old Rolls-Royces and why they may need a little bit of defending. That's coming up right after this.
You're listening to Bloomberg's Hot Pursuit. I'm Matt Miller along with Hannah Elliott. Hannah, I want to talk about your latest column. It's something that we talk about
All the time.
a fair amount.
This is not going to be anything new to anyone who's listened to this.
Well, but
column,
I think
it is new to some people.
it's still an important discussion, and I think it centers around one of the smartest pieces of advice that you give to people, which is, when you're looking for something in the market new that's overpriced or that doesn't exist, why not just look at something in the secondhand market? I mean, we don't all need to buy products that no one else has had before.
That's exactly right. And we've talked about how the price of new vehicles is kind of astronomical, and we get very desensitized to it in our job and the things that we do to report because we talk about them all the time. But really, like even the most basic 911 is more than $130,000 just to even get a 911. Ferraris, if you want to talk Ferrari, are averaging $457,000 for a new one. And that's not including the wait time. And that's not including if you want a special edition version, which tax on another, 40 to 80% of that price. So new cars are crazy expensive. I think we both can relate to the feeling that we want to have something that feels unique, that feels like it reflects our personality, but it can feel like an arms race, and it can be depressing, really, to find that.
And it's not even just luxury, right? I think a couple weeks ago, Cox Automotive came out with a figure that for the first time, the average new car price, that's the average purchase in America.
Not just luxury cars.
Is
of
more
any
than
car.
$50,000.
Yeah, that's wild.
So, and I always talk about the fact that I'm shopping a Suburban. I really want to get a big Suburban for my family. I have to have the 6.2 liter V8. Obviously, I'm not going to go with the 5.3 when there's a bigger one out there. But every time I put one together, it costs $89,000 or $92,000, and that's for what is considered, at least when I was a kid, the ultimate family vehicle, right?
Sure. That's
Chevy.
not going to give you rock star status, but I'll tell you something that will.
Yes.
An old Rolls-Royce. I laugh because you have heard me go through it with complaining about, a breakdown every now and then. This is true, but I have to say the upside of owning something vintage is so far outweighs any minor discomfort or setback.
I mean,
yes.
but does it outweigh the repair bills? Because this is what I always wonder. You see Rolls Royces on BAT or maybe Craigslist. I always look for these Bentley Turbo Rs. I love shape.
Yes. That is so you.
They apparently are great to drive as well. I never have, but I listen to Matt Farah talk about the one he bought.
Only a matter of time.
And they can be had for, $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 in what looks like pretty good shape. But then I fear taking it to Charlie Agapoo and paying $10,000 repair bills.
I know. And look, the truth is sometimes the cost of the repair and maintenance may exceed the price and value of the car. That is true. And that is because, to your point, a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow is a $20,000 car. Now, over the years, in the used market, yes, from 1970s, call it. I have not spent $20,000 on repairs and maintenance for that car, and I don't anticipate that I will. I've spent a couple grand here and there to do electrical work and to replace cracked hoses and that sort of thing, but nothing major, knock on wood. But yeah, the cars are pretty inexpensive, which means that, yes, the repairs in proportion to the cost of the car are high. But again, this is it's still less than buying an 80 grand Suburban. And the amount of joy and pleasure and delight that I get from the car far outweighs the cost. And as that famous saying goes, the quality will remain long after the price is forgotten. And that is true.
Well, and you can also probably easily fit 2 rear-facing car seats in the back.
For sure.
And a lot of stuff in the boot. So I guess, it would make sense. I think part of it depends on the generation that you buy. So
Yes.
I'm always looking at the SZ series, which
What is that?
The 80s and 90s Rolls-Royces and Bentleys that had a lot more, I guess, high-tech things going on in the motor that need, I don't know if it's always engine out, but expensive repairs.
Oh.
So in the Silver Shadow that you're interested in is the SY series. That was the previous, so 1965 to 1980. And it just seems like maybe they come with a lower bill.
Probably. I think that's true. And I want you to have a Bentley from the 90s. Like, this feels very you. I want this for you. And to that end, I have looked at prices, and you're right. It's all just more expensive. Like, the closer to modern day you get, it all gets more and more expensive, which is a little bit out of my price point, which is why mine are in the 70s. Although I do have one from the mid 80s, a Spur. That is actually the one that's running the best right now. So that's the one I drive to work. Again, I don't think it's for everyone. Like, everyone can find their sweet spot. But I really recommend old cars.
All right, well, that does it for this week's show. Remember to follow and subscribe to Hot Pursuit on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. You'll have to search Bloomberg Hot Pursuit. You can also send us your comments. Email us at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
And you can check out my columns and stories on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. You can go there for car reviews, events, and stories that you won't find anywhere else. Find it all at Bloomberg.com/pursuits/autos. I'm Hannah Elliott.
And I'm Matt Miller. We'll be back with a fresh episode in your podcast feed next week.